So I'll just kick it right off with what is the AIA College of Fellows? You're all here, I guess, because you received an email from me that said, "Hey, we think you're eligible for AIA fellowship." And what does that mean? The AIA College of Fellows is comprised of all living fellows of the Institute. Its mission is threefold, which is to promote research and scholarly work. The way they do that mainly is through the Latrobe Prize, which is $100,000 biannual, meaning every 2 years, not twice every year, research grant and ongoing component grants that we have been, AIA Oregon, for example, as a chapter, have been the beneficiaries of. We received a grant the year before last for our emerging professionals program, Mentor Madness. And that has sprung into a program that we now support as a chapter. The other charge of the College of Fellows is to mentor young architects and emerging professionals. This is accomplished by embracing a two-way mentoring program, like the ones we sponsor in our own state, but all over this AIA network with emerging professionals that is dedicated to lifelong learning and leadership development. And the last charge, which is to sustain the college through fellow advancement at recruiting and building the College of Fellows Fund, which is managed by the College of Fellows. It is a part of the AIA overall portfolio, but the College of Fellows does have broad management of that. They use it to give grants, to support research, and to give scholarships. What isn't fellowship, I should say? Fellowship is not something that happens at the end of your career, or a signal that your activity in AIA has come to an end. It is instead really, I think, increasingly more so a call to become more active. It is not just a medal or fancy parties and giving awards. It is not some predisposed pathway to leadership by chapter appointment or an automatic reward for those who have served. And it is not a license to gatekeep the profession or judge others. It is inclusive and competitive, which sounds like it's like against each other, but I think you guys, I went to design school as well. My background's in urban planning. You understand the idea of critique, which is that, this is a competitive process, but everyone is invited to the process. Simply put, being a part of the College of Fellows means you exemplify the mission of the Institute, and architects who have made this significant contribution to the profession or society through the defined objects, which we will get into, can become a member. And only 3% of AIA members have earned this distinction. So it is a prestigious event, and we do invite people to participate in it. And architect members, and this is why you got your notices, architect members who have been in good standing for at least 10 years may be nominated. You can be nominated by yourself, by application, by a body of 10 other signatories who nominate you, or your chapter putting you forward. So what we will cover today are those eligibility requirements. I do have some numbers on demographics and statistics, but I kind of left those out of the slide presentation because they don't quite mean a lot until you get into the application process, and we can chat about them more as we get into, but I'm here to answer any specific questions. The objects of nomination, which we will spend some time discussing, the submission components and where you can find examples, helping you identify where you are in the process and what we expect for this application cycle. So, eligibility. Nominees must have completed 10 cumulative years as an AIA architect member prior to the nomination deadline. Nomination deadline is generally in October. It was that last year. It's been that for many, many years. I expect that to be the same, either the first or second week of October. And questions like, does my time as an associate member come up? No, unfortunately, just your time as a licensed AIA member. If you are allowed membership, if you allowed your membership, for example, to lapse during that 10-year period, but you renewed, are you still eligible? It depends. If your total cumulative amount of years is 10, then yes, you are still eligible. If that time off created a deficit in that amount, then you have to wait until you reach your 10-year mark. But cumulative, not consecutive, is the important part there. And can emeritus members apply for fellowship? Technically, I believe the answer is yes. We'll get into some of the reasons why that might be difficult, but we do have emeritus fellows. The objects of nomination are the reason why you should be elevated in shorthand. You should be able to make a case that you've made a significant contribution to the profession and society through one of these 6 defined objects of nomination. And these have been honed over time through fellows, juries, and feedback from applicants. And this institute has been around for a very long time. So these standards have also been around for a very long time, but they are, like I said, reviewed, and occasionally we refine or compile or uplift or add, edit, and append, but not very often, to create a standard of excellence. The objects have not changed much. The definition of significant contribution, though, is clearly subjective and becomes more nuanced with each jury. And I want to highlight that. I will invite our other fellows here to comment on that if they have any thoughts about that. But in general, like I said, since the objects themselves don't change, but the interpretation of what significant contribution may be does change over time. Recently, I think impact has been narrowed to mean not just what one has achieved over their overarching career, but the fellows juries are taking into account the time span between achievements and the time of application, meaning hopefully your achievements are not too far in the past. They are looking for things that are relatively recent, and if not, ongoing. And like I said, I would invite the other fellows to comment on that at this point
I
if you have.
I would add that it's not simply having done well, having done your job well. It's also your contributions outside of work to whatever, civic organizations, not, NGOs, whatever. And
Mm,
as well as to the chapter,
mhm,
service to the chapter. So.
mhm,
Yeah, Heather, I just jump in and say national impact. I put it in the chat. That was just driven into me. If you have had regional impact, that is to be celebrated. Statewide impact, that is to be celebrated. But you really need to think about the national impact that you're making, and impact's the important word as well, not just amazing work, but what.
mm.
So I think evaluate yourself against a national impact probably is a good place to start.
Plus, I think as we get into the objects, each object has its own potential for you to impact the nation, the practice, the profession, the community. And so, they all have different kind of levels of what that impact can be. So,
And I think frequently people talk about, don't use the word impact, but use the term ripple effect. What has
that's,
been
yeah,
the
I was trying
ripple
to think what that was.
effect of your
Yeah.
of of your career?
We will discuss that. Thank you for bringing that term up. That's in a later slide. So we'll get through the objects and we'll revisit ripple effect. Object 1, then, just to kind of help you understand what the categories are for application, is design, urban design, or preservation. This object, its purpose states that you are applying for fellowship under the umbrella of promoting the aesthetic, scientific, and practical efficiency of the profession. This is granted to architects who have produced distinguished bodies of work through design, urban design, or preservation, and may be accomplished through individual or organizational effort. These works submitted may be of any size for any client, any scope, reflecting any type of architectural design service. But as our fellows have pointed out, and we'll get back to, you will have had to demonstrate a rippling impact and effect from that work. Object 2 is practice management or practice technical advancement, which to advance the science and art of planning and building by advancing the standards of practice. This is often granted to architects who have made notable contributions through their work in the practice, including firm management, administration, project management, or specialty areas like specific building types or technical expertise in a specific type. Object 3, led the institute or a related organization, kind of speaks for itself, coordinating the building industry and the profession of architecture. This is granted to architects who have actively, efficiently, and cooperatively, I think those are very specific words that were chosen, led the institute or a related profession like planning or landscape architecture or code, a professional organization over a sustained period of time, and have gained widespread recognition for the results of that work. Object 4, public service in government, industry, or another organization. This is granted to people who ensure the advancement of the living standards of people through their improved environment, often granted to architects who made contributions in public service or work in government, industry organizations, maybe elected positions. Leadership in the development of civic improvements, needed governmental projects, including such elements as conservation, beautification, land use regulation, transportation, or the removal of blighted areas, or people who have clearly raised the standards of professional performance in these areas by advancing the administration of professional affairs in their fields. Object 5. Alternative career volunteer work with organizations not directly connected with the built environment or service to society. This is granted to those who make the profession of ever-increasing service to society by demonstrating that architects make notable contributions to the public in alternative careers or through volunteer work. With organizations not directly connected to the built environment, but highlighting what architects and the way that architects think can bring to those organizations. Achievements may also be of a kind that transcends the other categories for advancement to serve society or humanity in a unique and important manner. And the last object, object 6, which is education, research, or literature, which is extended to those who advance the science and art of planning and building by advancing the standards of architectural education and training. Granted those who have made notable contributions in education, research, or literature. Your work may be in teaching or research. Also, those who provide inspiration to others in the field of the profession, and research areas may include codes and standards, specifications, new material applications, building efficiency, and environmental science or evidence-based practice. Those are other things that fall into this category. So I'll stop and just ask if there are any questions about the 6 objects. That's a lot. That just came at you very quickly. And if there are any questions, I'll stop it.
That's just
Yeah.
for any one area?
Yeah, you're gonna select one. Now your application may very well have examples of things that touch on some of those other areas, but you'll pick one where you are making your argument and carrying it through your entire application.
And what you might want to do is to catalog your accomplishments, your work, speaking engagements, articles you've written, service projects, all that, and then go back and see how which object is best supported.
And,
Yeah, I think,
you may have.
oh, go ahead, Tim.
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just a quick question. You may have covered this. Thank you. Are these 6 objects national objects? I mean, in other words, is it the same criteria nationally, or is it just, are these Oregon specific?
Oh no, these are nationally. Everything I'm discussing tonight is the national standard for fellowship application.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Or Tim, Oregon doesn't have anything to do with selecting people for fellowship. One thing I want to just kind of add is one of the reasons that the fellows are on the call here is to kind of offer our advice, our experience. We've listened to the review comments from past fellowship applications, and there are a little tidbits that we've learned along the way that we want to pass on to you to make it easier for you to, put together a complete application. And kind of following up on this object piece is that I've heard several times that they really want you to focus on one object completely and not confuse the jury by saying, well, I did a little bit, I had two different things that I focused on. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't focus on one object and say, also, in my career, I've done all these other things that helped support my impact, my ripple effect, or my experience and practice or the community. So you have to think of it all.
And I've seen people who submitted under one object and not be successful with jury feedback saying, oh, you should have submitted in a different object, doing so and being successful. It sounds like Bill's had the same
Yeah.
experience the
Yeah.
following year or a year later. So selection of the object, it's something that should be thoughtfully considered.
Is one of the reasons that we convene this process, because throughout the process, you'll get feedback from your fellows here in the state to let you know if they think you're aligned well, or if a tweak ought to be made that might make you more successful. So that is one of the benefits to participating in our process. You don't have to participate in this process to apply for fellowship, but I do recommend it.
Right. Hey, Heather, it's David McElnay. I've got a quick question relative to the objects, which was kind of the mindset when picking one. Is it more about chronicling what you've achieved or what you consider successful in your career, or is it more about competing with someone in a category? Can you give me some thoughts on that?
I'd like to let the fellows,
Yeah, I'll respond. I think Anita had it right. Like, pull all of your story together, and think about where you've had that ripple effect, that national impact. There's no competitiveness within the jury selection. I mean, there is, but you're not going to be privy to it. I think lean in to the message you're trying to send, and then just own that and go for it. So that goes to picking the object and then owning it. And to Bill's point, if you've served on in AIA or AFO or something like that, but you're not necessarily going for that object, tell the story, but it's got to be within the context of your bigger impact. And I don't mean to jump the gun, Heather, but the 35-word summary statements pretty much, is that next on the?
it will be coming up.
Okay.
You got, this happens every year. It's
Yeah,
totally fine.
like
It's meant
that-
to lead in this way.
That exercise will tell you where you're at too. So anyway, not to give it away.
Yeah, and also
Yeah,
one more
that's a
thing,
good one.
it's, to use the word that you just used, it's not your success that they want to hear about. What they want to hear about is, how did your success cause a ripple effect across the community, across the architectural community? So that really is kind of helps you kind of think about how you format your application, right? You could have a lot of design awards, but if you've never spoken at a design conference, if you've never served on a design awards jury, if you've never written articles in a design magazine, those kind of things help reinforce your ripple effect, right? In that category, in that object.
Awesome. We are getting to a few more of those items too. This is a good segue into the submission components. You heard a couple of those things just now in the conversation, like the summary statement, which is a little further down. But these submission components are the same and have been the same for a long time. Minor changes, maybe the number of letters or the number of pages allowed, but in general, a strongly worded, well-written, specific set of sponsor letters, just one sponsor letter, strongly worded, well-written, specific reference letters. And we'll get back to the strongly worded, well-written and what that means and how you get there. Well organized, and you see I've capitalized designed submission because although this is about the context and the stuff, you are also putting this in front of other designers, so it ought to look good. So it needs to be a well organized and well designed submission. It is not to exceed 48.5 by 11 pages. This didn't used to be a thing, but landscape format I do believe now is preferred because most of everybody's going to be viewing this digitally, not in print, so it does matter. 10-point font is the minimum. Clear, concise summary statement. It's 35 words, and that is a challenge to squeeze everything you're about to expand on in the rest of your application into 35 clear, concise words that are not overreaching, but do tell your story accurately. And we'll get back to that too. High quality images and exhibits. So like not fuzzy things that you've grabbed online, try and find the original photos. Consistency, leadership, results, and impact, kind of in that order throughout evidence throughout your application. The sponsors, the person that you're going to ask to be, and by the way, our first session, if you continue with this process, will focus on how do you find or be a good sponsor. So you can invite people that you might ask to be your sponsor, certainly show up yourself. But who are your sponsors? Your sponsor is the person who's going to help you get through this. They need to be an FIA, AIA, or AIA member in good standing. They should be someone who knows you well, and I would say very well, and can speak knowledgeably and critically and honestly to you about your career. Ideally, not someone from your own firm or somebody that you have charge over, because again, they need to be able to speak knowledgeably, critically, and honestly to you about your own career. A sponsor may sponsor more than one candidate, but should speak specifically to each candidate's individual achievements. So you don't want to pick a sponsor who's kind of like writing the same blanket letter to everybody. And I don't believe, quite frankly, a lot of people do that, but that's not what you're seeking. You're seeking someone who knows you and can speak to you and your achievements, not someone that you think off of their notoriety or name may be important to hear from. You want someone who's going to be involved in your submission process, who's going to check in with you and make sure that you're, doing it and doing okay. Your sponsor letter, they're going to be responsible for. So you want someone who's going to commit to doing that and doing it well. They will assist in crafting your submission, and they will be that liaison that helps with the reference writers to understand what portion of your application they should be speaking to, because you can't do that part. So your sponsor will act on your behalf. And here we are at the ripple effect. Once you secure your sponsor, you start working on your application, you've gathered all your information, and you kind of think you might know what your object is. It's time to start figuring out how you're going to demonstrate your ripple effect. And as they've already said, this is your impact beyond the day-to-day, what your job is, but speaking, publications, mentoring, educating, illustrating to the public or to the profession. Geographic impact, meaning, as Kurt said, not just local, not just regional, but national, maybe international. Legacy through others, meaning who have you mentored and how have they carried your ideas, your specific methodology or your way of thinking philosophy forward in a way that has continued to benefit the profession. This all comes together to create your demonstrated broad reach throughout the profession and the institute. And I will stop here again and ask if there are any questions about those components. It's pretty straightforward. Not to be intimidating. It seems clear, but there's a lot of work involved.
And I'd like to echo that, what Heather just said. This is a tremendously time-consuming process. It's iterative, so you'll probably write the zinger, which is that 35-word summary 2 dozen, 3 dozen times before you're done. And I can't tell you the number of nominees and candidates that I've seen get to, it's due in October, get to September and say, I am not going to make it this year. And that's okay. That's okay. Because through the months leading up to that, you will have done a large amount of the work. And so if you say, I'm not going to do it this year, I'm going to do it next year, no shame in that.
None at all. Really
But
smart,
it is a
by the way.
huge amount of work.
Yeah. So that's another thing to check in with on the Are You Ready list. Do you have the time that it's frankly going to take to commit to that? I was just talking with Stephen Ayers, who is your current interim CEO for AIA, about his fellowship process. And he told me that although he had done like all of this preparation, his family took family vacation in September. It happened to be like right before the application was due. And he said, I can remember that year because my wife was so angry at me because I didn't leave the room. I spent the entire time working on my application and it was successful, but the trade-off was tremendous and he still remembers it. So maybe pace yourself. That's all. Was his advice as well. Because it's important, as Anita said, to get it right, but also not like overextend yourself if it's not ready. So that's what we're here for. This is a great segue to this slide. We've developed this program and the fellows who are here on this call and the rest of them who are able to join us throughout the rest of this process are going to help with the submission. Oh, and here comes Stuart. He's one of our fellows who is also going to help.
And
Oop.
before you get too ahead, Kurt, did you want to say something?
Oh, sorry.
Totally okay. A couple of small to-do lists in your own mind is, I think it's 10 letters of reference, right, Heather? Think about
It's
who
not.
those might be.
It's,
Um,
isn't it 7 your first year?
Oh, it is
Oh.
7 your
I
first.
Yeah,
think
okay.
Bill's
I
right.
don't even remember.
Yeah.
Think
I
about
have it in
those.
a later slide, so yeah.
I had mentioned before your sponsor, pro tip ought to be a fellow. Like the more fellows you can pull in that really have a message of your impact, that's going to send more signals than just AIA members. So think about those letters of reference. Gather 7, 8, 9 ideas. My sponsor, for what it's worth, and this isn't a huge strategy that you should deploy, but I actually selected what I would consider to be my biggest adversary in the market. I reached out to
Perfect.
him and I said, who better to guide me through this and write a letter than you? And it took him a couple of weeks to like come to the conclusion, I want to help you. I don't know. I don't have any feedback if that was critical, but like it's a strategy moment, right? Who's going to lean in and tell your story the best? So anyway, just wanted to offer that.
And to pick up on what Kurt just said, it is your story. It is not the story of your firm or the firms you've worked for. In fact, people are discouraged from naming a firm or even having the firm's name in the document. So this is about you personally.
And your role in the things that you've accomplished. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And to that point, we cannot guarantee your successful elevation, but through this process, we hope we can help you with these elements that we're talking about: the clear, concise presentation, making sure you've met all the eligibility requirements, helping you get paired with a strong sponsor and create strong, specific reference selections, people who are going to write your letters for you, help you create that zinger, that summary statement that really tells the story and isn't too soft, quite frankly, because I think that's a big problem sometimes. It's architects, I've noticed over time, have a hard time kind of tooting their own horn in that 35-word statement. I did this, I made this happen, this is because of me, is really kind of tough. It's very ego driven and it's a new space for many to be in, but you'll get some support with how you come up with that statement, and then how we get you through the results and achievements and demonstrated influence through your application.
Heather, I had a quick question, it's David. Any thoughts on sort of what is it a challenge, or what people think about if you've stayed in one place for a long time and have, you have 20 references you can pull from, and they've known you for 30 years and things like that, versus having practiced nationally, internationally, traveled, sort of moved into different communities, and is is that a liability? Does anyone have any thoughts on that kind of thing?
I think to me it really comes down to what did you do in those places, and also, in your career, whether it was 10 years or 20 years or 40 years, what's the progression of your career, and when did you start your ripple effect? And so you may have lived in 6 or 8 different places. What did you do in those places that helped contribute to that ripple effect, right? You may have just done single family residences or $400 million airports. That doesn't matter. It's what's the ripple effect, right? So
We keep saying that. I try and
yeah,
tease this out in this conversation here too, which is, we keep doing this, is great. It leads right into the next slide of where are you in the process, right? That exposure point is what you're speaking to, David, which is how is the volunteer resume? Like Bill just said, what's your community impact? How far is the geographic reach of that impact, and how timely? I think that's becoming more important, more and more important with the applications. How recent, how timely was that work? And maybe even the quantity, like how many people did you reach? That's often a good part of the story. But also will help you with determining your eligibility, if you met the minimum requirements, and if not, will you meet them soon? The experience, do you see an object area of interest, and have you started saving or putting your hands on the valuable supporting materials for this claim? Because that's important. You got to have your hands on it, or you got to know where to find it. You can't just say, hey, believe me, they're going to want, exhibit pages with signatures. And that's important. Any questions about those things? Okay. Kind of teasing those things out a little further, on the distinguished body of work, as Bill started to say, that includes things like published work, articles, blogs, newsletters, award recognitions, notable contributions, and other practices, lecturing, taking national leadership positions, chairing national committees or knowledge communities, participating in the creation of forums or panel discussions, widespread recognition of your results through publication, awards, or requests to speak or serve on design awards juries, and the sharing of your knowledge expertise through leading seminars or publications in journals, or associated professional publications, national news media coverage, or published peer recognition. And I'll ask my fellows, are there some examples that I have left out, or are these good, broad examples in general?
I would also say quotes from people. So frequently, of course, there are the references, but aside, and those are pretty prescribed. The number, 7, I think 2 can be non-architects, I believe. But then using quotes on the exhibit pages or sprinkled throughout your submission from people who are not references. David was the most amazing designer I have ever worked with, and he thought of X, which was so far outside the box that we couldn't believe it, and so effective. But use those as graphic elements.
Very smart, and I will include that in my next slide presentation.
I'm glad I could help.
And I think, Heather, you earlier mentioned, AIA participation, and that's not critical, but they do want to see that you were involved in the AIA in some way, and whether it's not like you had to be president of the state organization or served on a national committee, but they want to see that you were active in AIA, you supported AIA somehow. So it's just one of those extra things that kind of icing on the cake, basically. So
Yeah, I would offer that I had, you're all allowed 10 exhibits. My 10th exhibit was not a project, it was a process. It was the process that we created, or I created, the self a grant, it's tough. It's really
It's
tough to
tough.
say, I did this, it's all me. It's all, like, you're going to have to get over that a little bit, but understanding you're seeking something specific. But anyway, I created a whole new process of engagement, and that was one of my exhibits. So like, it doesn't always have to be a project.
Mhm.
Stuart, you might want to even talk about, you've got a unique story to share.
Well, thanks, Kurt. And I was elevated just this year after 3 tries, changing my the whole direction of my proposal, or the submittal the second year, and then the third year. I changed my object the second year from community service to technical advancement because I'm doing modular for homelessness. But I found that I didn't spend enough time on the focus on the exhibits in the second go, and I kind of fattened up my I had like originally 5 pages of publications, and then I ended up with 1 page of publications, and really emphasized the exhibits. And some of my exhibits were some of my volunteer work as well. But there was a clear theme through my whole book, and it wasn't a whole. I mean, it's really tempting to just put everything out there and all your pet projects and whatever, but that didn't lead me to success in the first year. And just one other thing, I did hire a graphic designer who could edit, and she threw like 50% of my images from the second year out and really refined my third submittal, and that made a tremendous difference. And it's really hard to talk about yourself, but I found having somebody helping me to edit things was really, really useful.
Mhm. Thank you, Stuart. All good information. To Bill's point, I've put this slide together specifically about the leadership in AIA portion because yes, it is important. This is, after all, an AIA elevation. So they are looking for where you demonstrated need or helped elevate impact and results for the Institute. Any national offices held, local or regional offices, committee chair appointments, awards, jury service, any authored articles, or any conventions, even our own Oregon Design Conference that you have presented at. And any other bits that you can think of that we can discuss in the series, we will certainly bring up and discuss
Right.
with you.
And-
So this, oh, go ahead, please.
Well, I just want to say that having just been elevated, it feels really good to be elevated. And I'm still on cloud 9. And it's a very meaningful thing. And the process was difficult, but it was just really well worth it. So, and I think it's really cool that we had 3 from Oregon get elevated out of 82. Obviously New York, Chicago, LA, and the Bay Area are the big 4, and a lot of Texas this year too. And I just think having entries from Oregon, the Pacific Northwest, but Oregon especially, is really great.
Thank you. I'd like to think we helped you. We hope we supported you throughout that process, but certainly happy for you. We're going to have a party. I'll make a quick segue to
Good.
say
Parties are good.
at National Conference, if anybody is going to AIA 25 in Boston, we will have a fellows and AIA Oregon reception on Wednesday evening. Investiture is Thursday, so we don't want to get in the way of that. But on Wednesday, we'll have a nice party for our fellows. So yeah, well deserved. And I don't know exactly all of the ins and outs of this year's application cycle because they haven't been posted online, but the entry fee last year was $450. I anticipate it will be the same. If you are applying for a second or third year time, you must also complete the online application again. June 27th is when last year's application cycle opened and resources became available. So that is when I anticipate it again sometime around there, and we'll keep our eyes peeled for the dates once they are published and keep it a part of the conversation in our series. Oh, well. I don't know why it won't advance. Oh, goodness gracious. All right, advance all of them all at once. All right. Nifty. Okay, the 2025 College of Fellows jury includes all of these individuals that you see here. The one that I will highlight, Rod Ashley, is from Oregon and was a part of this process and has been a integral part of this conversation, but won't be able to participate because he's a juror, so he has to recuse himself. But he wished everyone well and best of luck, and looks forward and hopes to see, he'll have to recuse himself from any Oregon applications that are part of this process. But this is a great place for me to tell you a little bit about how the jury process works. And you guys that have been through it recently, please correct me where I'm wrong, because I've been doing this for a number of years and I'm sure things have changed. But in general, not every juror is going to see every application. There are a lot of applications, hundreds of applications, and so they will divide the applications between them, making sure that they have mixed up applications by region, and to make sure folks in general haven't been exposed to applications from their own state. And if you do know you're, seeing an application from your state, you recuse yourself. Other thoughts from the fellows on that process? Things I don't know, inform me.
Maybe it goes without saying, but if you know Rod Ashley or any of the other jury members, don't contact them through this whole process
Yes.
at all. I think it's obvious reasons. They're very strict about that, and it could impact their credibility, but also your application. You don't want to do that and waste all that time.
Yes.
I don't know, Heather, were you going to talk about the whole process, what the jury does after they get the applications?
Yeah, this is the place for it. That's what I invite you
Oh,
to help
okay.
me explain. So
Okay,
please
yeah.
jump in.
So what I understand, and I think there was something about it in the one of the recent quarterly newsletters about the fellows, is they assign 20 or 30 applications to every one of the jurors, and they read those applications start to finish, every word. And then they get together in Washington for like almost a week, and each juror is responsible for presenting the application of the ones that they read, and then they discuss each one for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes. They vote, and then they move on to the next one. But if there's several hundred, as Heather said, that's why they take several weeks at it. It's not a competition. They don't say, oh, this is the best one, this is the worst one, and so let's cut the middle here. And some years, I think Stuart mentioned there was 80 something this year. The year I got it, there were 100 plus. But it's a very, very regimented process. And then when it's all done, after the announcements are made, if you didn't get accepted, there's a way of finding out what recommendations they would have to make your application better the next time. So,
Bill,
go ahead.
go ahead, Heather, please.
I was just going to say that process of feedback has changed slightly. It was a debrief that you had to schedule with an actual person, and now it is feedback that you will receive that the jurors have typed digitally into the application while it's being prepared. So you'll get it in a digital format.
Yeah.
I was just going to add, it's very similar to any kind of design awards process, because as Bill noted, each juror's got 20 or 30 of them. You need to inspire them pretty quickly, otherwise you're going to be on the cutting floor, which goes back to that summary statement, and then being incredibly clear about your impact, and then driving it through the whole award, because these are our peers, right? They can read and see when it's seriously impacts or maybe reaching a little. And so I'm not saying it's like terribly brutal, but like in a design awards submission, they are moved by the message, and so that's the message I got. Anyway,
Have we talked, I'm sorry, have we talked about ripple effect yet?
A little bit. Please
Okay.
fill back in. Please say some more.
Okay, so ripple effect is huge, and ripple effect outside of Oregon is huge. And I've done quite a bit of work in California and the East Coast, but I didn't really make that clear in that first submittal, and they noted that it sounds like kind of only Oregon. So I put a US map in on the second and third, that to demonstrate that I have been working kind of nationally, and impacting other architects and other citizens with my work, and I think that really resonated. But ripple effect is a really big deal.
And I think to pick up on what Stuart just said, as you look to your references, try for geographic distribution. So someone, I think Kurt said, not, that your sponsor shouldn't be from your firm. Your references, maybe one from your firm, but then try to have them spread out from across the country to the greatest extent. I'd also say that the AIA does post the best, what they consider the best submittals of the year, and that goes on for many years, online on the Fellows website, the Fellows portion of the AIA website. And before you decide on an object and as you put your submittal together, you might want to look at those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to also two points there that Anita kind of reminded me of. One is on the references. One of the jobs of your sponsor and is as well as knowing you, but knowing what your application looks like. And each of the references really should write to something specific that supports your application. So, you might say, well, I want this person to talk about
There you've got
my
it.
experience in California, or, or I want this person to talk about my education experience. And so, so you want the reference letter to directly support your application, not just say, oh, I know this person and they're really great, they deserve this award. And then the other thing is Anita mentioned the examples that are on the Fellows webpage, which are really helpful. And they show you the format and the graphics and how they laid them out for each of the different objects. But when I got my fellowship, I think 12 or 13 years ago, and I worked really hard. I put everything together. I did all the things that we talked about here. And then I went and looked at those successful nominations. They were like the 5 best in each category. And I went, oh my God, I would never. And I stopped. I stopped work, and I thought I had a really good application. And then I realized, wait a minute, they selected 125 people the year before I did. I don't have to be the 5 best. I just need to be the 100th in the 100th percentile.
It doesn't matter, right?
And then I went right at it. But I like to use that example to say, you don't have to be the best one, right? You just need to tell your story and show what you've done. So.
I jumped ahead in the slides because you guys jumped ahead, and I think it's fine. I don't have the application deadline yet. Like I said, it's normally the 1st or 2nd week of October. As soon as we have it again, we will publish it. I think more important, as our fellows were iterating, is that if you go to aia.org, on the side menu, you'll see under awards, fellowship, or under, I can't remember what, under design excellence, excuse me, you'll see fellowship. And they have links for, like they said, the best examples and best submissions from the past. Also, this PowerPoint as we wrap up, and for everybody who registered, along with the recording, we'll send this along. So these links are active, and you'll be able to access them from this slide presentation, from this slide deck. But yeah, also general inquiries to AIA about the programs or about your membership eligibility. We can check that out for you here at AIA Oregon. So you can contact me or Paul or Kathy, but also general inquiries to national. This is always where I like to say too, they don't give us a good way to know who is fellows eligible in our database. We don't get like a nice column that goes, yay, check off their fellows eligible. We have to do a little bit of math. And that is why I'm making my best guess at who is eligible. So I will say also, if you have attended this and you find that the eligibility criteria don't yet apply to you, please let me know, and we'll make sure that we get you like in the right roster. In general, I've tried to cull the list for people who have been members 10 years or more with no lapses and a licensure date that seems to match a 10-year period, at least a 10-year period. So there's a few steps I have to go through, and it is not entirely accurate. So I make apologies for any bits that were not accurate. But please see
so
me
along
after.
that line, we don't really know what our members who are eligible by virtue of their length of membership. We have no idea what they've done in their career that isn't, that, we don't see it at a design awards meeting or a local,
Correct.
presentation. So we kind of rely on you to say, oh, I fit into one of these categories, much like Neil did, and then come to us through Heather or through the fellows committee, to just say, hey, here's what I think I am be eligible for. So go ahead, Kurt, you're going to talk about that.
Sorry, and there's no way to raise your hand in this meeting. I wanted to say two things. Number one, every fellow in the state of Oregon is going to be super excited to support you in whatever way possible. So don't be afraid to reach out. Number two, they're also going to take it incredibly seriously. So they're going to look at your work or your summary statement or whatever. They're going to guide you, even if that means not yet. But do reach out and ask questions, because we, as a group, we're wanting to elevate our committee and the fellows within the state and our impact in terms of mentorship, and we want more people to join the ranks. So I'll just say that.
Well said, Kurt.
Yeah.
Examples. Am I still muted? No. Examples of what that means for Oregon, just to kind of put a fine point on that. We have this great thing going on right now. Paul can drop the link to it in the chat, perhaps, of Project Almost Architect. This is one of the charges of the fellows nationally, which is to connect with emerging professionals. Our emerging professionals in the state made application to the fellows grant 2 years ago to a program for mentorship, and won a grant from the College of Fellows to do Mentor Madness, which was like a mad dash, kind of like 8-week process that culminated in a in-person get-together at Oregon Design Conference in 2024. Based on that, they did another application in 2025. It was not accepted by the College of Fellows, but because it had demonstrated such deep impact, our chapter continued to support it this year and rename it, call it Project Almost Architect, and it continues on. This is the type of thing, and by the way, the fellows are deeply involved in this process as mentors to those professionals who have been selected. I think it's 10 scholarship recipients we have out of many applicants. We had like something close to 27 applications.
No, we had 54.
We had 54 applications and had to select 10. And so that also demonstrates to you the bigger need that we have. We've been able to do as much as we can, but the more fellows that we have to help us, build, quite frankly, support and be champions of these things, help us get those applications passed at the national level and help us support it here at the local level, we'll be ever more successful in filling back the pipeline for new talent. And I think that's also part of what this fellowship process is about. So yeah, with that, we have a few minutes left. I'll leave it open for last thoughts or questions. I'm so happy to see such a big crowd here tonight, though. This is really encouraging, and I'm very happy to see it. And yeah, just any last questions or thoughts?
Yeah, my mic's on. Hey, it's David again. I'm Chatty Cathy tonight. So again, kind of thinking of back over an entire career where you may have done a profound amount of work for a 15-year stretch with someone who's in a location very far away, with a group of people who have been sort of in touch with you, but you're not working with them for a 10-year span. I'm very curious about that, where does every person that's writing a reference or that can be a reference or writing something have to be relevant over your entire lifespan or, career span? That's sort of, I'm trying to figure how that kind of works.
David, if as kind of elaborate on what I said earlier, if you divide your what you want to talk about to chapters, right? And maybe one chapter was the 1960s or one chapter was in the 1980s, and have that sponsor talk about that chapter of your life.
Yeah.
And what impact they saw your practice having, right? I don't think it needs to be current. And it could just be, well, you did all this stuff and you've been busy with other things, you went in a different direction, but look at the impact you had while you were doing that stuff. And
Okay.
I don't know that there's any timeline, nothing I've never heard of anything expiring, right? So
Right, like you can still call this person, or maybe you can't because they're no longer with us. You know, there's things that are,
yeah, and that's the sad
you
part.
know,
They may be gone.
right. There's that's a
Yeah.
very real thing. Like
Right.
Peter Rice, the structural engineer, he's long gone, but
Mhm.
taught me a lot. But anyway, that so quite frankly, the reason I asked these kinds of specific points is that you know, I'm honestly I'm a lead fellow candidate, and I've gone through that, and once or maybe twice. I don't know. It's a blur, right? And still considering it, but I'm frustrated with some of the places they come from in terms of being extremely specific to service to the organization and extremely specific to like kind of relevance of that continuum. Like, you know, everybody in your life is supposedly going to be like right there, either to call or, and so I just found that to be challenging. It sounds like maybe the AIA's or your
If
experience was a bit different.
if y'all would permit me, the fellows, to make a comment here, I think what would be most beneficial in that type of instance is just kind of bring it all to these sessions. That's exactly what these sessions exist for, and allow the other fellows to help you mold whatever that item is into the right story or angle it the right way for presentation so that it makes the argument that you want it to make. And I think that's literally what we're all trying to do in that process.
Heather, I think that's right. And I think the role of the sponsor is so critical because they need to understand you and they need to understand your impact because you don't see the reference letters, right? The sponsor has engagement with your references and the sponsor will edit and can advise on the curation of that letter. So I think that's an important note because your sponsor's got to be all in on you are right. Your 35 words make sense to me, and they can help again direct those reference letters to stay on point. Whether they're in a the chronology of your career, or if they're so specific to the impact you're having. I
You know,
had
Kurt,
I had
a
a
couple years
desire.
ago,
Yeah, go ahead.
a couple years ago, the last time I was a sponsor. I don't think the sponsors allowed to, or by the rules, should be seeing the reference letters.
That's I was gonna
No,
I was
but they
gonna say
do.
that I accidentally, when I was a sponsor, messed up and
Yeah.
read a letter before it
cool.
was submitted. And I went to the AIA and said, this is what's happening. They said, you can't use that letter.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You
So-
can. So Bill, you're absolutely
Mhm.
right. But the sponsor can frame things
Mhm.
up. You know,
Right.
here's the summary. I want you to talk about this person's work,
Mhm.
you know, in public service or
So
whatever.
that's right, Heather. Maybe I got it quite.
Mhm.
But the point I'm trying to make is that sponsor is so important, and as you noted, Anita, directing the message.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think, and I don't think that's, yeah, I think that's what I understood Kurt to be saying too. Not that they're gonna see the letter necessarily, but they are gonna direct those people on which part of your summary they are speaking to and how it creates a through line for your entire argument. They'll set up for that person why them sticking to the script is super important.
I want to say one other thing. I had a
Oh,
sponsor, but I had a lot of other help. I had other fellows that weighed in. Patty Tillett, I always give him a lot of credit because
Me too.
I don't have a lot of relationship with Patty, but he reviewed my 35 words and asked the kind of questions I needed to hear, as well as my sponsor, as well as my design director at the firm. So like, just because you have a sponsor, don't just put all your eggs in that basket. Use us all.
yeah.
I had I think there are different levels of sponsors. Some who maybe do almost all the work, and some who are do less work. And so, but I completely agree with what Kurt just said. I had probably 10 FAIAs reviewing my work, and I had Patty too looking at my 35-worder, Kurt, and it was wonderful. And it was really fun working with so many FAIAs. It made my submittal way better. Everybody was very frank, and I didn't take it personally, but it was a great process because of that.
You know,
Does, does
Heather,
it make sense?
I'm sorry. I wonder if we couldn't suggest like the next step before the next meeting. Um, if I was sitting here for the first time and hearing all this, I'd say, boy, am I really in the right spot? Or should I really proceed this year or next year? And I wonder if there's a way for somebody to meet with, through Kurt and the fellows committee with 3 or 4 fellows on the phone or on a call and just say, here, here's I've laid everything out of my career, from high school, to today, and this is what I think I'm going for. It seemed like it'd be a little awkward for 5 people or 6 people or 8 people to make that presentation in front of everybody at the next meeting and get a critical review of whether we would think that the jury would accept all that.
Yeah.
You are right. You are right. And so before the next session, which is May 22nd, I believe, which is the next Thursday roundtable date we have scheduled for this. The topic of which is the opening statement. We will be in contact with you with this recording and the notes, and anybody else who missed this presentation, who wanted to be here but had signed up and wasn't here, we'll give them that information so they can catch up. And yeah, the homework is going to be working on your 35-word statement, and we'll provide all of the contacts of the people who were here, highlighting the fellows, so that you can email or get in touch with the fellows who are here as a part of this process to get that sorted out before you get to the next meeting. Because as Bill points out, if you get there and you haven't thought at all about your 35 words, you're already behind. So yeah, that is you guys, this is why I love doing this. The fellows are like just right on top of things. That was the next thing before we leave. So I was typing into the chat. I know we're a little over time. I do appreciate everybody sticking around for a little bit. But if you have any final questions or final thoughts to wrap this up, otherwise, I really do appreciate everyone's time.
I just had a quick question. Hopefully it's quick. One, thank you for everyone's time. Heather, that was very descriptive and great job presenting. Thank you, fellows. Regarding sponsors, does it make any sense potentially finding a sponsor that's already sponsored someone else in the past and has that expertise?
Sure.
Not required, but it doesn't hurt.
Not required.
Yeah.
Okay. We've all talked with other fellows about the process. Through the fellows committee, we meet once a month or so, and we say, well, I was the sponsor for this person, and these are the pitfalls we had, and so you really learn what other people are doing along the way too. So may not everybody's a sponsor the first time once, right? So
Right.
you don't have to have been a sponsor before.
But I would say
you.
that a question when you're selecting your sponsor, ask them if they have the time to do it. It's not just your time, but it's your sponsor's time as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any sense like what that time commitment is for a sponsor, so that when we go to ask,
When I was a sponsor a couple of years ago, towards the last month or two, we would have review meetings. The fellow I was sponsoring also hired a editor, basically, who put the package together. So we would meet together. I think I spent more time reading and redlining the application several times than just an hour phone call here and there. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would think that the less busy the sponsor is, the better.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, that's true.
You got somebody who's running a really busy firm and whatever, and you're kind of getting snuck in on the sidelines. That might not be the best option. So
that's awful. Thank you.
Not ideal. All right. Yeah, it looks like we got people who need to sign off. So I'm going to let you guys go since we're a few minutes out after. But like I said, we'll wrap this into a package with the assignment and contacts for everybody. And Kurt, to your point, we'll include the list of fellows in Oregon so that people can be in contact. Sound good?
Yeah.
sounds good.
Awesome.
Thank you for
Excellent,
setting this
everybody.
up and orchestrating it, Heather. Well done.
Oh, you guys, it's my pleasure. And I hope to see you guys some more throughout this process. Have a great
Yes.
evening.
That was really great. Thank you.
Thank you,
Take
guys.
care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.